Welcome to Sabbath Collective, a community of people interested in celebrating the Sabbath and pursuing God through a Hebraic worldview of Scripture and our times. So, this is part 2 on the how and when of letting go. As we spoke through last week, letting go requires both wisdom and courage. So tonight we're going to look at letting go of our dreams. Hey Diana, saw you getting that workout. Wow, you and Edwin were doing it. Hey Randell, good to see you. Yeah, I am upgrading with my pet sit gym. You are absolutely right. There's a river behind me and a pool to the side. You can't get any better than that. So, old dreams versus new dreams. Often embracing a new dream means letting go of an old one. You can only receive what Adonai has for you with open hands. As we've learned from Ted Lasso, letting go is not quitting, okay? So letting go is not quitting. That's kind of an important thing to know. Hey Aaron, great to see you. Shabbat Shalom. Because a lot of us think it is and feel like we're giving up. Eckhart Tolle says sometimes letting things go is an act of far greater power than defending or hanging on. So oftentimes it takes more courage, more strength, more power to let go than it does to hang on. But we oftentimes in Western culture look at letting go as quitting or giving up or weak. But quite the opposite usually is true. Hey Sissy, good to see you. Shabbat Shalom. How do you know when it's time to let go and when it's time to hold on? So here are a few questions, and I'm going to post these so we can kind of ask ourselves these questions. There probably is many, many more that you could think of, but just a few to kind of let ruminate. When you imagine the dream, can you see it? Can you feel it? Or does it seem to you real? Or does it seem fake? So in other words, when you're imagining the dream that you have, no matter what that dream is about, can you see it? Can you feel it? Does it seem real? Or does it seem fake? And when we ask ourselves these things, sometimes when I post this, if you kind of download it and ask yourself these questions, the first thing that kind of comes out of your heart will be your answer, because the body knows, okay? The mind sometimes wrestles around with things, right? But the body knows, and the body will lead you, and it's usually your initial instinct when you ask yourselves these questions. Hey Katie, great to see you, hon. Shabbat Shalom. So, question number 1, you ask yourself that. Number 2, when you think of the dream, does it feel exhilarating or simply familiar? So when you imagine the dream, does it give you a sort of energy, excitement, or does it just seem kind of familiar? We love familiarity, right? It's our comfort, it's our security, we like it. Does it seem like it's grounding you in the present moment? Listen to this one because it's important. Does it seem like it's grounding you in the present moment and pulling you into the future? Or does it seem like it's sort of holding you back in the past? Does it give you energy when you think of your dream? Or does it drain you? Do you feel exhausted when you think of your dream? Like, oh, I can't make this work no matter how hard I try. Does it feel like a loss when you think of your dream? Or does it feel like a gift when you think of your dream? And again, there's many more questions we could ask ourselves to know when it's time to let go or hold on. These are just a few. And again, post them, and your own heart will lead you. And as soon as you say this question to yourself out loud, you'll feel it right away. And that answer that comes up from within right away, that's your true answer. Your mind will rationalize, but your heart will lead you to the truth. Maybe a dream is no longer able to happen, but in some way we feel like, oh, but if I let go of it, I'm a quitter. And then what will I be? While I go through a couple other issues with this, what do you think that you tell yourself when you do say, you look at a dream and you say, can this still happen? Or do I still want it to happen? Or is this important to me? When you ask yourself questions of a dream and you start to question it, what does your brain tell you to get you to stop doing that? Okay? What does your brain say to you that says, no, don't go down this path? If you could post in the comments, that would be great. Hey, Phoebe, great to see you, honey. Shabbat shalom. So maybe a dream is no longer able to happen. Perhaps it's no longer relevant to you. Sometimes we actually need to stop stalking our dreams, our old dreams, right? Stop stalking them. You know what stalking behavior is, and we most certainly see that in romantic relationships sometimes, right? We Facebook stalk, we drive by or walk by or whatever. Stop stalking old dreams and instead ask yourself these clarifying questions. And it helps us to know, are these dreams still for us today? Or were they dreams that were for us 10 years ago? Hey, Rai, good to see you. And Young Ming Shan, quarantining there and shut down. Good to have you with us. So Zephaniah 1:5 references turned back from following the Lord. And that phrase turn back in English is the Hebrew word shuv, where the word teshuvah comes from, which is repentance. Shuv is turning towards Adonai. So again, teshuvah is the concept, the physical concept of your walking in a direction that is separating you from God. Teshuvah, the biblical understanding of what repentance is, not the Western church understanding of what repentance is. Teshuvah is you turn away from those things that are separating you and turn back towards God. Shuv. You turn back towards God. So this verse in Zephaniah 1:5 says, turn back from following the Lord. Another word is used in this verse. It's not shuv, which means turning towards Adonai. It's the word sug, which is turning away from him. Turning away from him. So Zephaniah 1:5 speaks of turning away from following the Lord. And Yeshua actually teaches this when he says to remember Lot's wife. In Luke 17:32, remember, he admonishes people, remember Lot's wife. Well, what's up? Why should we remember Lot's wife? Lot's wife, instead of pressing forward into the life Adonai had for her, she sort of looks back longingly, that's shuv, at the dream of Sodom. So when they moved into this place, it was a beautiful, lush land. It was a beautiful place, and they were really prospering there. But there was a lot of shenanigans that went on there. And whether it was a spontaneous, natural thing that happened, whether it was some sort of lava thing that happened, whether it was a meteor thing that happened, whether it was God's direct punishment or intervention, who knows? What we know is the story says that there was some sort of catastrophe with heat and fire, and it burned up everyone. And what happened was Lot's family was rescued from it, but she couldn't quite pull away. And so she didn't just look back, she sort of looked back with her whole body. It's this word suv, okay? Suv. So you look back with your whole body, and when you're looking backwards with your whole body, that's actually turning away from God. Isn't that interesting? Actually turning away from God. We sometimes read that story and think, well, Lot's wife was saying, you know how long I took remodeling that kitchen and now I got to leave it? It wasn't that. It was actually she turned towards something, and when she turned towards that, she was turning away from God. Okay? And Yeshua says, remember her because this was not a place that she should have remained. Sometimes our heads are spinning like that, right? Because literally we're back and we're forward and we're back and we're forward. And we, right? We get whiplash. So let's see what some of your comments are. Aaron says, sometimes I can't decide if I have a dream because it was my dream or it's a dream that was made for me early on, but it was never really mine. Yeah, that's such a good question, right? Was this a dream for me by someone else, or was this my own dream? And again, these are things that you question. And sometimes you may not actually know the answer to that, but at this stage of your life, when you're actually asking yourself these questions, you don't really need to. You can just ask yourself, it doesn't matter where the dream came from. Is this dream relevant for me today? And that's the question that we ask ourselves. So remember last week, we looked at how we commonly view not letting go. So oftentimes when we talk about not letting go, these images come to mind, and people use them when they talk about not letting go, that when we don't let go, we're dragging baggage with us. Okay, this is kind of the image that we think, where we're literally kind of dragging around some sort of weight with us. And that's how we sort of view not letting go. But the thing is, and we talked about this last week, the chains aren't actually just dragging something. The chains actually are more like fences that keep us locked in. And if you missed last week's, I strongly suggest go back and give it a watch. The chains are more like fences that keep us in and others out. And that's what the old, looking back constantly on the old and not looking towards the new. And again, when we look back, we're actually looking away from God, right? And when we look towards God, we look away from that. An old dream that no longer works needs to be let go. And when we think of this physically, I think it's really helpful, okay, with the whole neck, head, body thing, right? The dream wasn't necessarily bad or wrong. Like Aaron mentioned, I don't know whose dream it was. I don't even remember when it started. It just became part of my operating system that I had this dream. It's not necessarily bad or wrong, but it may not be for you now. And negotiating with yourself about what that is and what that looks like doesn't mean that you ever did anything wrong by having that dream. It doesn't mean that there was anything wrong with the dream, and again, or that you quit, okay? So how does this work? You probably have heard the analogy of the pilot deviating from the course. So a lot of life coaches and business life coaches give this example, right? It's the pilot that sort of went off of the course. And experts in air navigation have a principle known as the 1 in 60 rule. For every 1 degree a plane veers off of its course, it misses its target by 1 mile for every 60 miles that you fly. And so this means that the further you travel, the further you are heading away from your destination. And you can start out here, but just by a little degree over time, you end up way over here, right? You've all heard that analogy. So again, it's often used as a reminder to be careful not to deviate from the course in even the smallest of ways. But it can also be used to illustrate the power of the smallest little changes that can affect where we are heading. It just can be the smallest little changes that change our path completely. This is the power of the process of letting go. Now, oftentimes, again, we think, Aaron says, you turn away from the specifics of a dream or from the dream altogether. Boom! So glad you asked that, because we are just about ready to talk about that right now, Aaron. Perfect. Jim says, I think both. Yeah. Specifics of a dream may have influence by others, but the dream could overall be yours. Yeah. Phoebe Aaron says, good question, because if parts keep reaching out, even though you're letting go. Yeah. Okay, great. We're going to get into that. You guys are way on it already. So again, this is the power of the process of letting go, not as a one-time event. Now, here's the thing. Western Greek thinkers, and you've heard me say this many, many, many times, are event driven. They're linear, they're either or, and they're event driven. Hebraic Eastern mindset is process. It's both ends. It's about the journey, it's about the process, right? And so we oftentimes think, well, when we let go, it's this monumental event, and heaven sings, and we just drop it, and we change, and we're delivered, and we go a different way, or whatever that looks like. Very rarely does that happen. Sometimes it does. Sometimes we just see something and we can let it go, and it all goes in one big drop. But very rarely does it happen like that. Stephanie says, maybe because in the West, we've never been taught that mourning and grief are weaknesses. We've been taught that mourning and grief are weaknesses, and we're afraid to let go. Absolutely, Stephanie. Yep. We have been taught that. And like we talked about last week, with letting go of dreams, there is a mourning and a grief. And that is to be accepted and walked through and lived through. Even when you know that the dream is no longer relevant, we still sort of mourn it. We mourn the dream, right? Which is perfectly natural and healthy and real and human. So very rarely is it a one-time event where we drop it. Rather, this process is one of small movements towards letting go. And it's usually a gradual release of things. In other words, letting go one at a time. Letting go one at a time. Now, one by one. Now, this is what Aaron just brought up. We open our hands enough to let go. And one sometimes smaller part of the dream may come out. Another smaller part of the dream may come out. Sometimes there's an untangling them as the realities are seen. And some parts of the dream you may possibly keep, and others you may let go. Sometimes we let go of the whole dream, and other times we keep some and let go of some. Last week I gave two pretty intense examples, but tonight I'm going to give a simple one, okay? I knew a young woman that lived in New York, and she moved to New York because she wanted to write and direct and play the lead in her own play. And she wasn't thinking Broadway. She just was thinking, this is what I want to do. Anywhere is fine for me. This is what I want to do. And so she learned and she grew. She moved to New York after her grad school. So she was about 22 or 23. She was part of our church. And she really grew in her craft. But then life happens in such a way where that slipped away. And about 10 years went by. Okay. So she reconnected with me. And we were talking about it, and I remembered her dream because she talked about it often, and it came up. And I asked her about it, and she said, oh, it can't happen now. I know, I just have to let that go. And I said, okay, well, we do that, but I'm just curious, why do you feel like it can't happen? And she said, well, my idea for this story it's always been the same story. My idea for the story was about a young woman, and I'm not a young woman. I can't play that part anymore. So what she did was she got everything together in a big ball of string, and the only way that she could look at it was how she imagined it when she was younger. And if she couldn't do one of the things, she couldn't do all of the things, which is very much how we oftentimes relate to things, right? So I said to her, I'm wondering, can you still fulfill a part of the dream you had, and maybe the other part looks a bit differently. Is it possible to re-envision that dream? And she actually said to me, I've never thought of that before. But that's very common with us, right? We have a dream, we envision it in a certain way, we're unbendable with how that looks, and we don't think of it in any other way. And she was shocked when she answered me. She goes, I never thought of that before. It was just kind of all tied up together. And what happened was she ended up letting go, okay, where a few of those pieces went through her fingers because she held the dream loosely. And she was open to a new way that would look. And she started to write the play. So she wrote the play, and then she found a local theater. She had moved out of New York. She found a local theater that was willing to do the play, but the local theater only worked with one director, and he directed all the plays, but he said he would co-direct with her. Okay? So she wrote the play, she co-directed, and another young woman played the part brilliantly. And it was a huge success. And not only that, but it was part of the season. In other words, they did it for, I can't remember how long, once a year. I don't know how long that lasted, but it had a couple runs. And it was all because she was able to reimagine the dream. So she didn't hold so tightly that she said, I'm going to have this no matter what. She was willing to hold the dream loosely and reimagine it. So that's one way that we can relate to our dreams. Hey, Evelyn, great to see you, honey. Philippians 3:13. We're all probably pretty familiar with this verse. But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind me and straining forward toward what lies ahead. And of course, as you know, the Hebrew language is all about that, right? It's all about these tactile things, right? Everything that we relate to in faith can be touched or felt or sensed or eaten or smelled or seen or heard in some way, right? Even if it's the image of it or the reminder of it, it's still very tactile. So let's break this down. Forgetting what lies behind. Paul uses the Greek word here, epilanthano, which suggests a deliberate act of the will. In other words, this is a choice. It's not a feeling. It's not about what we feel. It's not about our emotions. It's just a choice. It's a simple choice. I choose to forget what lies behind. And what that means is it doesn't matter if it still comes up, if it still pops up in the mind, in the memory, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if something comes up like, oh, but if you let that dream go, you're a quitter, you're a loser, you give up, you're not strong, you're weak. It doesn't matter. We've made a choice. Does that make sense? So all of those things just kind of come, we observe them, we notice them, just like meditation, right? A thought comes into your head. Okay, it's there. Okay, you don't beat yourself up about it. You just observe it and then you let it go. Same way, right? So a choice, not a feeling. Remembering the past is a fine thing. It's a good thing. Honoring the past is a good thing. But we aren't living in the past. We live in the present moment. And we have the creative power to shape and affect our future by what we do in this present now. Are you with me? We have the creative power to affect and shape our future by what we do and think and envision now. And if we're living in the past, not only are we not now, but we're not going to have any effect on the future. Okay, so again, there's these really powerful images. The second part of this verse is straining forward. It's the Greek word epiketino, and it means literally to stretch forward. I mean to really stretch forward. Like, you know how those runners do when they're leaning in for the finish line, right? How they're almost falling over. They're leaning in so much. This is the visual of this. So again, let's look at this. Forgetting what lies behind, Okay, that means that you choose, again, like we talked about, we're turning away from and turning towards where God is working. So forgetting what is behind me and straining forward, leaning in towards what lies ahead. So all this connection to the body is really kind of helps us to get grounded in this. Does that make sense to you? So we let go of dreams by choice and we lean into the new ones. So what kind of dreams can we let go of? They can be dreams of certain kinds of relationships. They can be dreams of what your career may look like, what your creative expressions may look like, what your adult life would be like, the dream you had of what your parents would be like. Some of us have, believe it or not, some of us when we're young, we have dreams of what our parents are like or should be like, and then they fall short. And we're angry and we're rejected and we're all that because the dreams that we've had towards our parents are unrealistic. Maybe a dream about your marriage, if you're married, what that would look like. Maybe it's a dream to be married and what that looks like. The dream you had of what your children would be like or what you as a parent would be like. We have all these dreams. As a new first-time parent, I'm going to tell you a story. I've told this before. Some of you are going to say, oh, no way. Some of you have heard this. It's the truth. Hold on. Let me read your comments first. Stephanie says, Pearl Bailey said, if I spend all my time looking at yesterday, I miss today, and I'll never see tomorrow. Good quote. Good quote, Stephanie. Aaron says, I'm going to ask a super specific question, and feel free to not get into it if it complicates things too much. Can you walk us through how this process can apply to the dream of marriage? It feels like an institution placed upon all of us to dream and strive for by both culture and especially church communities. And it feels like something that redefining the dream doesn't necessarily feel clear. Good. Let me read the rest of the comments. As someone with a parent going through Alzheimer's, that's a great, really great example, Jim. Okay. Aaron said you just mentioned it. Never mind. Okay. So yes, that all of these dreams that we had, and this goes back to Aaron's earlier comment, sometimes they are dreams that we had, and sometimes they're dreams that some other person or institution has put on us, okay? Like the college that my kids went to was a Christian college, and the saying that they had there when you went into that college was the ring by spring. I kid you not. The ring by spring, okay? Meaning when you went in there, you were going to go out of there being married, okay? And again, that's that Christian influence, that sort of old school, I should say, Christian influence that, you got to get married and then you got to have babies. And nobody can make a decision to not have children. What's wrong with you that you don't want to have children? You have to have children, right? This is all imposed. It's someone else's dream. So as a new first-time parent, I had these dreams of what parenthood would be like. Yes, Diana, that was definitely, Jamie will tell you, she'll confirm. So I had all these dreams of what I was going to be as a parent. So I was very independent. I was very involved in the church. My husband and I were married for 6 years, so we were kind of like in a flow of life and with work and with our faith and with our ministry and what we did and our volunteer work and all that. And we lived in a way that we did a lot of things, okay? We taught a ton of Bible studies. I think we had 3 or 4 a week. And I got pregnant with my first child, and I thought, I'm like going to just be this person that just straps this kid on my back and go about my business. I'm going to take him with me. I'm nursing him so I can go anywhere. I can do anything. Nothing in my life is going to change except for now I'm going to have a baby. And I'm bringing the baby into my life. This is how I looked at it. And so I thought that I would be the kind of parent that didn't have to change anything. And I thought that parents that stayed home after they had a baby and did nothing were kind of, honestly weak like that you should just be able to keep going. Okay, so I also had a dream of the birth itself. I had a birth plan, the birth itself, and I did a lot of research, and I found a lot of Christian things that supported that weren't exactly in context. And so I thought I was going to have this kind of easy peasy childbirth. And here's the bottom line: the birth was very traumatic, and Matthew was colicky and cried every minute that he was awake. I kid you not, I exaggerate not, until he was about 6 or 7 months old. Every minute that he was awake. My sister will confirm, my husband will confirm. My husband was at work a lot and very rarely home. And because I nursed the baby and didn't use bottles, I was the only one who fed him. And so he only slept 2 hours at a time until he was about 6 or 7 months old. He only slept about 2 hours at a time. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't go to church because he would scream at the top of his lungs. Now, when I say cry, I don't just mean cry. I mean full-on colic scream at the top of his lungs. I couldn't go to work in the clothing ministry I was a part of. I couldn't go to the grocery store. I couldn't go out to lunch with the friends. I couldn't do anything. I was trapped with a screaming baby that cried every waking moment with no more than 2 hours of sleep at a time. And all I did was remember the dreams I had about motherhood constantly and think about what a failure I was, or how wrong this has gone, how terribly wrong it all went. And one time in the middle of the night, after this had gone on for months and months, and I was so tired, and he was screaming and angry. Now, he was angry and screaming because he was actually really in pain. He was very, very colicky. But I was so sleep deprived that a thought popped into my head. If I just take a pillow and put it over his face, he'll stop crying, and this torture will be over. Now, I know all of you are thinking, what did you just say? But we don't talk about this real shit enough, okay? I'm sorry. People just act like it's, Shangri-La. I mean, you're in the trenches, right, with this, and we don't talk about it enough. That thought came into my head. Now, that's not me. That's not who I am, and I have never in any way physically, hopefully emotionally, abused my kids. Never. But that thought came into my mind. And when it did, I thought, oh my gosh, where did that come from? How could I have thought this thought? See, the loss of a dream wasn't in my operating system. So I was taught by my Western Christian mindset that you believe a dream and you never let go. And I kept trying to push through to make this happen. And this was a constant reminder that I couldn't make it happen. And on top of that, I had no sleep. Holding on to an unrealistic dream was destroying me. And it was a minute by minute reminder that I didn't have the experience I hoped for. And it wasn't until this thought popped into my head and it scared me so much that I began to connect with this as, well, what's really happening here? And I connected to the fact that the Lord could teach me a lot about my control and my ego issues. Hello, my control and my ego issues through my child that I had absolutely no control of whatsoever. So it was all purposeful, okay? So Aaron says pushing through to make it happen is definitely revered in the West. Yes, it is. And there's a place for that, and I'm going to get into it when we do holding on, like when you hold on to dreams. But yes, very much so, Aaron. It's revered, and Evelyn's saying she went through that too. Good. Yeah. A lot of people do. I tell this story a lot to let mothers know that these crazy things will come into your head, right? So whether it's with your parents or your kids or your friends or your business colleagues or yourself, there's a letting of unrealistic expectations towards others or towards situations or towards yourself, and an acceptance of what really is. Then, after that reality is processed, then you can choose. Okay? Then you can choose. So, in other words, with a screaming baby, I had to accept the reality and say, okay, this is the reality. My kid cries every waking second and I can't get more than 2 hours sleep, and that's not going to work. So I'm going to have to maybe change up a little. So what I began to do was ask for help. So I asked my mom to watch him, even though I knew he would scream his head off for a couple hours, and I started to string together 4 hours of sleep a night. So I changed up what my expectations were and connected to really what was happening. So after that reality is processed, then you can choose things. You can either not have the relationship that you thought you wanted at all, okay? And that's a valid choice. So in other words, if you have, let's say, parents or a romantic partner or a business partner, or you have the job of your dreams and you realize this really doesn't work for my lifestyle, you can decide, can I change it? Can I change the expectations? Or if I can't, then maybe I don't want the relationship at all. And a lot of us have gone through this with our churches, right? This is what we've gone through. Or you can have one that looks different than what you've ever dreamt of. So you have a new dream. And I'm going to get into that when I talk about holding on in dreams, because it's important that we get new visions, new dreams, where you are not dishonored. The new dream is one that you're not dishonored, not disappointed, not fake, not, you're striving, you're burning muscle, right? You're burning your spiritual and psychological muscle because you don't have the God grace to enable you to go through it, to go towards it. Or maybe you would adjust in a way, follow this is a crazy thought, where you would have no expectations at all. Now, I'm not saying we do this with every element of our life, but it's something God's been working in me for a couple years now, and it's pretty scary and pretty thrilling. You have no expectations at all about anything. Not everything, but about a thing. You have no expectations. So it's like the vacation that you plan for, right? And you have dreams about. And your partner doesn't listen to you about the tropical sun and gets sunburned and has to spend 3 days in bed not being able to be touched by you, so there's no romantic time, and not being able to go out dancing and have drinks and lovely food. Instead, they have to be in bed and in the shade. Now, is there still good and joy in that vacation? Sometimes we enter into things with these expectations, right? And if we can sometimes transition and have hope without expectations, that's a real thing. We can have hope without expectations. Ooh, that's big. Hope without expectations is sometimes a beautiful option. And it keeps you with open hands to receive whatever kind of comes to you, whatever the Lord wants to give to you. You have these open hands, you receive it all as it's from Him. So this is a real challenge, hope without expectations. Let me see if some of your comments. Aaron says, I think He's working that in me too. Oh, really, Aaron? Okay, that is so cool. Hope without expectations. So next week, I think I'm going to take a week off because I'm in this beautiful place with a saltwater pool and a kayak on a river, and I would really love to not work at all and to just take a little break. I'm still going to be available for counseling, so if you want to talk about anything, I'm still definitely available for that. Hey, Randall, good to see you, but I think I'm going to take a week off on the teaching and then pick it back up the next week. So when we come back, I'm going to do letting go of labels. Labels that you've either put on yourself or labels that other people have put on you. And this is really going to be a thing, okay? When we let go of the labels. Some of them we think are really good. Some of these labels we put on ourselves are really good. But yet, we may be being led to let those labels go and discover, let's say, who we are without the labels. Jim says, I feel like that motto, hope without expectations, is my motto going into auditions. Oh, so cool. Great. So a lot of you really click with that already, which is good. Hope without expectations. So we're going to close this time with the lighting of the Shabbos candles. And traditionally, the mothers light the candles, which connect us to the Sabbath light of peace, of joy, and of unity. And then traditionally, she encircles the candles with her hands 3 times as a gesture to welcome in the Sabbath. Blessed are you, our Lord, our God, who leads us into turning towards him. The Lord is our light and our salvation. May your light be felt in this space, in this enlightenment of truth, and in the radiance of joy. Amen. And then as we go for the next 2 weeks now, let's connect also with the visual part of this, turning back towards and living in the present that pulls us towards the future. I love you all. Shabbat Shalom.